what they'll do is the Alinsky tactic of accuse your opponent. That is, you know, what you are doing.
Yes.
No, in fact, you mentioned in ancient, was it ancient Rome, or where the babies are, the corpses? Yeah. Oh, yes, it's been the way of the world to sacrifice children on the altar. Yeah. We put a stop to that, and it's only in recent history we have taken the strong moral positions.
I want to point out, though, because I'm an opponent of all forms of liberalism, including classical liberalism, neoliberalism, left liberalism. I'm even opposed to free market liberalism. I'm opposed to all forms of liberalism. I'm very unusual. You probably won't meet many people like me, but like I all of that stuff about human dignity and all that stuff about ending infanticide happened before the Enlightenment. Okay, it happened with the conversion of Europe to Christianity. Prior to the Enlightenment, under regimes today we would consider intolerably authoritarian.
Yeah,
right. Which is why I consider myself a right winger. Like I would be Hamiltonian if I were back at the Continental Congress. I would be like Hamilton. I would want an elected monarch who could take long-term vision, these kinds of things. But I'm more comfortable with that. But I just is the government constrained by the Constitution in any way?
It is. How? If you look at, I love bringing this up. We've talked about it. Gun rights.
I know it's your thing. It's your thing.
Yeah, gun rights, huge. And actually, free speech has expanded. We used to have obscenity laws, and now people can speak.
By the way,
more freely.
We should give credit to our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters who maintained the anti-porn and the Hollywood production code all the way to 1959.
Wow.
Until it was finally overturned, and then we got the explosion of pornography. But thank you, Roman Catholics, even though I'm not Roman Catholic, but they did the hard work there.
But the question is, I suppose, is the government constrained enough? No. Is it constrained? Yeah. And we can make an argument as to how constrained it is, but it is. I mean, you look at what happened in New Mexico. The governor says, I hereby decree no guns.
Yes.
And across the board, everyone said, you can't do that. Right. And so the Constitution is simply an artifact of our minds.
Let me give you an example of why I don't think it's constrained. So Title VII, we had the Title VII case, right, where in the 1960s, they banned discrimination on the basis of sex. The Supreme Court just redefined the word to include transgenderism.
That's right.
Which was never intended or meant by the people in the night. They didn't include cross-dressers in the word sex back then, right? And this ability of the court to do that very thing happened. It's not granted to it in the Constitution. It's only allowed to decide in particular cases.
Yes.
Not to determine not to impose a view of the Constitution on the other branches of government. But that was arrogated by the court in the very first court case, Marbury v. Madison. Like the Constitution didn't survive contact with reality in the very first court case. So when you have an institution that can simply redefine any term to achieve any social outcome it wants, how is it limited? How about the agencies? Right? We're supposed to have separations of powers, right? So look at the IRS. So we have IRS special agents. A special agent just means they can carry a gun, right? You have IRS special agents that can charge you with a crime. They charge you with a crime not under laws, but under regulations written by the IRS. You're denied a jury trial, and you'll be tried by an IRS judge. They have all three powers of the branches of government.
They force you to testify against yourself.
That's correct.
And people really need to get this. Libertarians are right. If you do not provide evidence against yourself to the government as to your income every year, they will come and they'll shoot your dog. They'll lock you up.
100%. But my point is, we're governed by agencies these days. I don't even think elected officials even control the government. I mean, Trump ordered the military out of Syria, and they said no.
Yep. But that doesn't.
So we know the president's not in control of the military.
But I would say corruption of the systems is not an absolute statement that they are there. So my point is,
you think there's still some remnant of limitation?
Well, I think if you go back in time to the First Amendment, you could not, you couldn't carry signs saying certain things. People would not allow it.
Yes.
George Carlin famously got arrested for his, 7 words you can't say on TV.
Well, originally the Bill of Rights applied to, these restrictions on government power applied to the federal government, not to the states. It was only later through the 14th Amendment that they were actually extended to the states, right?
But I just mean that, I guess I'll just step back and say simply, there are instances where the government does what the Constitution prescribes and instances where it doesn't.
Yeah.
So you can make the argument that the Constitution is just like a smiley face sticker on the wall, and it's really just our morals that are deciding it.
Yes. So you forced me to clarify my views, and even as I'm thinking about it, you've helped me do that. Actually, thank you. So look, I think the Supreme Court, for example, looks out and says, that the temperament around abortion is getting to the point where it might lead to violence. So we need to outlaw it again, or at least allow the states to control it. Like, I really think those are how the decisions are made.
I agree.
They're not made on whether the Constitution limits.
I believe that if you were going to have an actual constitutional scholar, judge, and not a politician, when Texas sued Pennsylvania over the 2020 election, you had Thomas and Alito who said, it is our duty to hear this case. This is how our Constitution works. And the other judges were just like, nah. No,
we don't need to.
Because it's not what is prescribed in the rules. It is what we as humans ultimately decide makes the most sense.
Correct.
There's a balance that must exist in that worldview.
Yeah.
For instance, I think judges should be good people and actually use their judiciary discretion to protect those who are more or less protect or punish those, depending on if they're more or less deserving. If you have a man, and they mostly do, but not enough. There are too many instances where a judge goes, well, I don't think it's reasonable, but life in prison, you know, because you jaywalked or something.
Right.
I think we need to see more discretion and leniency for those. And too many people are just thrown into the system and mistreated.
Well, the thing is, and this goes back to some of the surrogacy issues that we talked about, because there are massive government economic incentives to put people in prison. So let me give you an example. I have this thing where every once in a while I get so pissed off that I'll hire a lawyer for 8 hours. We'll go down to the Title 4D court in Dallas, Texas, where the child support court, Title 4D, they're actually called Title 4D courts. We have a statute in Texas. I printed it out somewhere, which basically says the courts are always to rule so as to maximize Title 4D reimbursements.
Yeah.
It doesn't say in the child's best interest. It's to reimburse Title 4D. So they'll have black men lined up in the hallway going out to the street, and they're just putting them in jail. All of them are just going to jail. So I'll just sometimes I just get so pissed off about this that, you know, I just hire a lawyer, and he signs a contract for $1 with these guys, and he just stands there all day and just represents these people and keeps them out of jail. It just pisses me off.
Good for you.
But here's the deal. They go off the Title 4D reimbursement program, and when they put them in jail, they go into the prison reimbursement program, which is $93 a day. So the government just looks at these people as, you know, fathers as just like economic transactions, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask your perspectives on this stuff. If you were a judge, and you were presented with a court case that, if you were to rule correctly based on the law of the land, the Constitution, and your duty, it would result in mass rioting and widespread violence, would you choose to incorrectly rule for preserving peace?
Okay, so weren't there protesters, death threats, murder plots against some of the justices when the Dobbs decision was leaked?
Yep.
Yeah, and they didn't bend. So I'm a little skeptical about this idea that everything is going to be done because of ideological persuasion. I mean, those justices ruled in that case, despite the fact that they didn't have a lot to gain personally or politically from it.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering your moral position on, is it better to be correct for as to the law of the land, or is it better just to it's sort of the, you know, to look at Texas v. Pennsylvania. I'm sure the Supreme Court justices thought, hey, look, if we take this case up, Texas is probably right. The election is subverted. It goes to the House of Delegates. There's going to be mass chaos. They were writing in the Boston Globe that the Democrats would persuade Western states to secede from the Union in the event of a Trump victory if Trump didn't concede some demands of theirs. So I'm imagining that many of these justices were just like, the law doesn't matter. We should just do what minimizes harm. I'm wondering if you think a move like that is the right thing or the wrong thing. Should the judges have been like Thomas and Alito, saying, it doesn't matter what you think is right, or it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. It happens that we uphold our rules as they are constructed and written for the preservation of the system.
I believe judges are empowered only to rule in specific cases. That is all the Constitution allows them to do. And no, don't forget, the appellate courts are actually not part of the Supreme Court's judicial branch. Those are Congress's courts.
Yeah.
Congress sets their appellate jurisdiction and everything else. In fact, Congress should use that. They should say you can't have environmental lawsuits for nuclear plants. They can just stop federal lawsuits on that. It's easy to do. Yeah, pipe dream. Yeah. But so if you think about it, a judge only ruling in a specific case, he must accept the riots.
Yeah,
he must accept the riots.
The law is a teacher. The law is a teacher. It tells us something true about humans. It tells us something true about human behavior. You get the law wrong, you're going to get human behavior wrong. I mean, like, I see that especially with the decriminalization of marijuana, for example, in our area. Like, when I was a kid and I was in, high school in the 90s, there were a few people smoking a little bit of pot, definitely a lot of drinking. But generally, like, we weren't doing that. We're like, well, pot, no, that's illegal. It's not just illegal. It's hard to get, all of that. No, it just wasn't really a part of our world. Today, my kids will sit in the nurse's office with friends who are tripping out because they got bad hit or too much content. They're hallucinating, whatever it is. And my kids are some of the only kids around that are not doing any levels of pot. And the psychosis, the lethargy, the lack of interest in schoolwork. We taught kids something when we decriminalized marijuana. We taught them this is no big deal. And so it does matter what the law says. We do want laws that are grounded in natural law and what it means to be human, that has a proper understanding of human dignity and the rights of children. And then you need courage. I mean, probably courage is the thing that is lacking the most across society, probably with judges, but certainly with the ordinary man too. It is time for ordinary people, with whatever position of power you have, or if you're just a mom and dad, it is time for courage. Nothing changes in this country without courage.